Okay, welcome everybody to this additional meeting of the Policy and Strategy Committee for Nottinghamshire and City of Nottingham Fire and Rescue Authority at this new lovely joint fire and police headquarters, Friday the 1st of April. And we have got one substantive item to deal with on the agenda today. So the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence.
Chair, we have apologies from excuse me, Councillor Toby Neal and Councillor Rain is substituting, so I believe he will
join us. And Councillor Roger Jackson is on his way and will join us shortly. Item 2 then is declarations of interest. Anybody with any interest that they need to declare at this point? Members or officers? None? Okay, item 3 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of February. Does anybody want to raise any comments or questions in relation to the minutes? No, I'm not seeing any indication. People are happy to approve them as a correct record? Yeah, they're agreed. Item 4 then is Firefighters Pension Scheme Immediate Detriment Review. And before I take the item, we have got a question in accordance with the rules set out in our standing orders from the Fire Brigades Union. So I'll invite Fire Brigades Union to ask their question, then I'll give a response, and then we'll take the formal report and I'll open the item for discussion. So Mark, is it you asking the question?
No, thanks, Michael. Nottingham FBU welcomes the first 5 recommendations of the Chief Fire Officer's report. We hope the Fire Authority accepts these recommendations on the grounds of ending discrimination of its workforce and not solely on the threat of legal action by the Fire Brigades Union. We understand the position and the risk to the authority in accepting these recommendations. However, Nottinghamshire Fire Authority can hold its head up high and then firm in the knowledge that they've done the right thing for its employees. Will the Fire Authority stand in solidarity with the FBU to end discrimination in the workforce, wherever this may come from, both now and in the future?
Thank you, Mark, and thanks to all the colleagues in the FBU as well. And just before I give you the formal response to the question, I think it is also worth saying at this stage that we should recognise as an authority the work that you've done as a representative body in terms of this important issue. Clearly, issues in relation to pensions and workers' rights are a concern for you as a representative body of the workforce, but also of a concern to us as a service and to, I think I speak for all elected members when I say us as elected members as well. And I know these issues at times in recent months and years have not been easy, but you've certainly stayed steadfast, and I'm sure the workforce appreciates the work that you've done, so that you should be commended for your efforts in that regard. The formal response is that, as the Fire Brigades Union know from the signed joint commitments on equality, inclusion, discrimination has no place within Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service. Furthermore, the authority is reassured that the values, behavioural framework, along with the education of employees and visible leadership at all levels, including from authority members cross-party, will ensure a consistent and positive culture remains our aim and our central focus. The culture and expected professional standards of a community-focused and inclusive organisation is shared with the representative bodies, including the Fire Brigades Union, working together, and we have high confidence that wherever evidence of any form of discrimination exists, this will be dealt with robustly. So I hope that speaks for itself, and thank you for the question to colleagues from the FBU. So I'll hand over to, I think, Becky's going to introduce the report for us.
Lost on me that this is April Fool's Day with all the complexities of the Firefighters Pension Scheme. So just to give a bit of background, so the Home Office did issue some guidance to enable us to progress with immediate detriment back in last year, and following that the Memorandum of Understanding between the LGA and the FBU was signed in October. That was following a test case in the High Court, and 2 of the cases that were brought there were against this authority. That was settled out of court, but that sort of gave the backdrop for signing the Memorandum of Understanding, and at that point we all thought we were in a position where we could progress paying the immediate detriment, settling those cases. So we brought the paper to last November's Policy and Strategy Committee to approve to progress on those lines, only for about a couple of weeks after the Home Office guidance to be withdrawn. So that's left us in quite a difficult position because the risks that they outlined in the paper, which is attached in Appendix 1, clearly stated that there were significant risks if we progressed without regressed before the new legislation came through, but that legislation is not due to land until October 23, and there have already been some suggestion that it could slip beyond that. Along with most other fire authorities, well, all other fire authorities, I sort of paused before bringing anything back because we felt that something might progress on a national, we might get further guidance or further clarity on what those risks were. We've had a couple of retirements go through since then, but now we've got several more coming up, and I'm fully aware that I haven't progressed any of the Category 2 cases, even though I've got figures ready to do so, because of the risks, the increased risks from the withdrawal of the guidance. So now I think we're at a point where we're required to move forwards, and that's why I'm bringing this paper today to ask for approval to carry on paying those Category 1 cases and the Category 2 cases. There are risks. We know that we can still put through all the pension-related costs into the pension fund. So it's not the pensions that are the issue, it's the tax arrangements around those pensions and also any compensation payments. So we will be paying compensation payments on any expense that would be incurred to put a member back in a position before the original, to comply with the original guidance, so before the discrimination took place. So if a member is having to pay, for example, some tax that they wouldn't have had to pay, it would fall to the authority to pay to compensate them for that payment. So it was as though that discrimination had never taken place. So the risks are outlined in the Home Office withdrawal letter, but they're not very specific, and we're not sure exactly what they all are. We've asked for clarity. That hasn't come yet from the Home Office. We've had further guidance yesterday, but in this last week, but it doesn't really provide any further clarity. Given the information that I've got, I've been through and I've estimated the costs, and for Cat 1 cases, we think it could be in the region of £100,000, and for Cat 2 in the region of £40,000. But on the back of that, we need to think that, firstly, I don't know what all the risks are. I can't say I've covered all of those costs, so there is a risk that my estimates are not. It could be more than that. Secondly, we've got a threat. If we get taken back to court, we will almost certainly not be able to defend that case, especially having agreed out of court for the 2 High Court cases in October last year. And so on that basis, I think we're stuck with a bit of a choice, really, to make a decision whether to progress with these cases, knowing that there are some risks, or we don't progress, and then if we have further court actions against us, that would be very hard to defend. We'd have the court fees, and we'd be in a position to still have to implement these cases, implement Cat 1 and Cat 2 cases. There is some wording from the Home Office that the compensation payments could be covered if we can justify why we're taking this action against the threat of legal action, and I think we're able to do that. So I feel that we could be mitigated in some way from having that understanding that we may be able to claim some of these costs back from the government, because we, especially having had the court case already. So I think that gives me some comfort, but clearly until we get to that position, I can't make any guarantees to you. So I think we've got the information. If anybody's got any questions, I've got Sean here from Derbyshire Fire, and he helps us with some of our pension as a pension expert, really. So if you've got any questions or if there's anything you don't understand, please ask, because I'm fully aware that it's not an easy decision that I'm asking you to make today.
Any comments or questions on the report, Sybil?
I think we need to go with the recommendation. I do feel that we're between a rock and a hard place on this, but this is the right thing to do. Even though it puts us at some risk, I think it's a greater risk not to do it. And I wholeheartedly support the recommendation.
Thank you, Sybil. Any other comments or questions?
I echo that.
Anything you want to add, Roger?
Unfortunately, my apologies, Chairman. You did get me with the April Fool yesterday.
My fault.
I did say where I was there, and you said Bestwood.
I'd made the same mistake, Roger.
On me. Sorry.
Until I checked the thing this morning
I
again.
didn't check. I just picked the papers up and visited anyway. So I do apologise for my lateness, but yeah, having read the papers, Chairman, and I haven't really been able to listen to Becky after it, so yeah, we're back against the water, certainly, so we've got to go with it. Yeah.
Craig?
Yeah, Chair, thank you. I suppose I'd ask members to kind of think about in the context that pensions nationally are in a mess. I wish I could find a more eloquent way of sort of saying that, but it's a mess, and employers are picking that up. I think this needs to be read in the context of, well, of some of the other claims that are being taken nationally against government stroke the employers. So you're on call in terms of retrospective claims for pension allowance, and that causes us some difficulties about what's the workforce going to look like. So the workforce are making decisions based on detriment about whether they leave early, and we are beginning to see signs of that, of the workforce choosing to take options to leave early. We also have people dual contractors, so people that are on the whole time but also provide us good on-call support as well, who may find that they've got more pension entitlement when they claim back the current ongoing issues. So we might find that some of the workforce leave because they've got more pension than they thought of. So pension reform, back to the Hutton Review, was it 2008, 10 or whenever it started, has got a real legacy of it. The paper before you is based on the information we know today, and I think the delegations and the recommendations here as well will help Becky in terms of delegation as your scheme manager to make some decisions, and if need be, if the risk changes significantly, is to come back to members, particularly of this committee, to make sure you're informed on the decisions, because there's lots of unknowns around. Where we've said significant risk, it's significant because it's completely unknown, and you're between a rock and a hard place. If we don't do this, as the letter I think actually is quite useful, I'm actually thanking my Fire Brigade Union colleagues. I think the letter is useful because the union have won these cases and they've reaffirmed their position, and that might be significant costs to the authority if we go back into court knowing that we're actually infringing the Equalities Act. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Craig. I mean, my position on this is exactly as you said, Craig. This is not a mess of our making. I think it's hugely frustrating that the Treasury are dragging their heels about withdrawal of guidance and understand the issues about primary legislation, secondary legislation, etc. But this is clearly an issue that runs to the heart of people's terms and conditions, and it needs resolving, and it needs resolving quickly. We're left, I think, as Roger said, in an unenviable position, but nowhere near as an unenviable position as the people who are at the receiving end of the uncertainty in terms of the workforce, in terms of their pensions. So I think on the basis of the information that's in front of us, and we can only take decisions on the basis of the information that's in front of us, trying to look forward at some of the risks, this is not only the right thing to do, but the appropriate thing to do as well, given the information that is in front of us. We haven't got a crystal ball. We can't foresee what the Treasury are, where they're going to fall on this issue, if they do in the coming months. So I also think it's the fair and reasonable thing to do. And but we'll just say as well, I mean, this has clearly been a very, very stressful issue for Becky to deal with, not least because it's complex in its nature, but also because it's a very real live issue that impacts on people's lives. And I know from the conversations I've had with you, Becky, how seriously you've taken this. And I have to say, I think the report that you've set out does elucidate the risks very, very clearly to us as elected members, but also I think charts a sensible way forward that shows our values, shows that we care about the people that work for us, but also tries to land us in a sensible position given the difficulty of the situation. So I think you should be commended, Becky, for the work that you've done on preparing the report, but also in the way that the report has been presented. and it's helpful, I think, to have the background information in terms of the information in relation to the Home Office guidance, but also I was very, very keen, and Craig was very keen for colleagues to see the letter that was sent to me by the Fire Brigade Union, because I think in making these decisions, transparency is important, and as elected members, it's important that we're all in receipt of the same information before we come to such a important decision. So, anything else to add from people? Anything else you want to say, Becky?
Thank Sean with his help on this as well.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for being with us as well. Jason?
I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I'm just thinking in terms of governance. Obviously, we've got indicative figures, the 100,000 and the 40. I'm wondering if we set a threshold of, I don't know, 20% variance to that we're just notified so that we keep governance and members updated, something like that.
Yeah.
Certainly do that.
Yeah, I think it's a really sensible idea. And I think Becky will endeavour to keep us in the loop anyway on it.
Yeah,
But I think it's a really good idea.
I suppose, Chair, you've also got your local pension board stuff where Becky provides reports as well. So there's obviously Councillor Fielding is on that as well. So there's a couple of avenues, Councillor, but obviously Becky can certainly accommodate that.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody else happy? I'm going to move the recommendations then, which is, I will read them out because they're quite important. We note the update concerning the age discrimination and immediate detriment remedy position related to the firefighters' pension scheme, that we approve that the firefighters approaching retirement, brackets category 1, continue to be offered the option of an immediate detriment remedy, that we also approve that retired firefighters eligible for an immediate detriment remedy, brackets category 2, continue to be offered the option of an immediate detriment remedy, and that we delegate to the head of finance and treasurer, that's Becky, currently as delegated pension scheme manager authority to adopt a new memorandum of understanding when available, which removes liability from Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service, and finally that we delegate to the head of finance and treasurer as delegated pension scheme manager authority to pause all ID cases if confirmation, I should actually read confirmation with an I rather than an O, shouldn't it, from the government is received, significantly increasing the financial liability to the Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service. So I'll move those recommendations. I think we do need, thank you, that's helpful. Councillor Jackson seconded. We probably do need a show of hands for this. It's quite an important decision. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? It's a unanimous decision. And I think that is the end of the meeting. So thank you to everybody. Thanks to the FB for being here and for your questions. Thanks to colleagues who worked on the report. And thanks to elected members.